Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I will talk about the movie named The BFG. The movie begins late at night in an orphanage in London. The matron of the orphanage goes to lock the door, but noticing the mail, she forgets to lock the door. Meanwhile, a little girl named Sophie is hiding under her blanket at the stairs, sees this, and goes to lock the doors by herself. Afterward, she returns to her room. Sophie covers herself with her blanket, continues the book she had been reading. A few seconds later, she hears some noise coming from the outside, which startles her. Sophie anxiously goes and checks the alley. Thankfully, it is just the cats playing outside that toppled over a trash can. While Sophie is still staring at the cats, she sees a giant hand that picks up the trash can. Then Sophie makes eye contact with a scary-looking giant and quickly rushes back into the room. Just when she's about to turn around, the giant sticks his hand through the window and abducts her. Racing through London, Sophie's blanket curls up into a bag from which Sophie can see the different tricks the giant uses to avoid being spotted by other humans. The giant finally makes it out of London and into the countryside and goes through a thick cluster of clouds that leads straight into giant country and into a cave, which is his home. The giant hangs Sophie from a tree and proceeds to start chopping a vegetable called snozcumber to prepare dinner. While doing that, Sophie hops out of the blanket and climbs to the window, trying to escape. The window is difficult to open given her tiny size. During this, she knocks off some sewing tools, which alert the giant. He tells her that she cannot go anywhere if she doesn't have wings. He then pushes Sophie into the pan he's holding. The giant continues making his dinner, and Sophie asks where she is. He tells her she's in giant country, but Sophie thinks no such thing exists. Suddenly, she is startled by a sound coming from fellow giants. Sophie gets scared and asks the giant not to eat her, but the giant laughs, saying he doesn't eat humans. Sophie then reminds the giant that she was snatched away without consent, and the giant doesn't deny it. But the giant gently hands her back her glasses, prompting Sophie to ask if the other giants are nice like him. But he tells her that the other giants eat humans. Sophie is perplexed as to why he abducted her. He explains that if he had left her, she would have gone around telling people that she had seen a giant, which would lead the humans to capture him and put in the zoo. But Sophie promises that she wouldn't tell anyone. Yet the giant doesn't believe her and tells her that they will be spending the rest of their lives here in giant country. Then he tosses the blanket over her and takes her to the shipbed, where he places her into the crow's nest, reminding her of the man-eating giants out there if she tries to escape. She notices a glowing object in a container and asks what it is, and the giant tells her that they are dreams. Sophie tells the giant that she doesn't dream as she has insomnia, and he picks up her book and starts reading. While listening to the giant, Sophie eventually falls asleep. The giant leads to a room where he had all the dreams trapped. Meanwhile, Sophie wakes up and escapes through the window. She tries to run but is stopped by a sleeping giant who eats her. Just then, she wakes up from her sleep only to realize that it is a dream. She immediately figures that the giant did it. While talking, he grabs a drink named Frobscottle that seems to be fizzling. The giant proceeds to drink from the bottle and produces an explosive fart. Just then, another giant named Flesh Lump Eater storms into the house, asking Sophie's friend who he was talking to. Sophie hides behind the Frobscottle. Flesh Lump Eater claims he has a splinter and wants to be treated. Suddenly, he detects a scent and asks Sophie's giant friend if he has gotten a new pet. The giant tries to distract Flesh Lump Eater while Sophie jumps into the snozcumber on the table. Flesh Lump Eater then starts sniffing around the table when Sophie's giant friend offers the vegetable to distract him. Fortunately, Sophie's giant friend sees Sophie's legs sticking out of the veggie and jumps to the rescue, reminding his friends that he prefers to eat humans, not vegetables. He finally leaves after grabbing the bottle of Frobscottle. The giant picks up the vegetable and Sophie crawls out. Sophie climbs his hand and he takes her to the secret place where he keeps dreams. He helps her wash herself up and then offers her a variety of outfits. After getting dressed, the giant notices a red jacket Sophie has worn and becomes sad. Sophie asks the giant what he does, and the giant tells her that he catches dreams, and Sophie immediately asks to come along, to which the giant declines. However, after much persuasion, he finally agrees to take her along. On exiting the cave, the giant tells her they must get past the sleeping giants without being caught. He carefully tries to sneak past them, but is caught by Flesh Lump Eater. Sophie falls off and rushes to hide in a nearby car, dropping her blanket. Meanwhile, the other giants turn Sophie's friend into a football and toss him around. The giants come up with a new game where they use cars as roller skates and try to crash them into each other. Sophie, who is hiding in one of the cars, quickly swerves the vehicle to avoid a crash. The giants continue to enjoy their game until it starts to rain. Fearful of water, they all retreat, allowing Sophie's friend to get her and leave. After they leave, the giants find Sophie's blanket, and after sniffing it, they realize that there is a human in giant country. On the other hand, Sophie and her giant friend walk through thick cluster of clouds and emerge in dream country where it is already night. The giant then tells Sophie how he can hear what the stars, plants, and animals say to each other due to his large ears. He also tells her that he used to be called the Big Friendly Giant and jumps into the lake. She introduces herself as Sophie and jumps in. Both appear on the opposite side of lake without any speck of water on them. They are now in the section of Dream Country where the giant catches the dreams. He then encounters a stubborn dream that he has a problem catching. Sophie then helps him out, and finally the giant catches the dream. He hands it over to her and allows her to put it into a jar. Afterwards, the Big Friendly Giant urges Sophie to go and catch more dreams. She does so, but soon comes in contact with a red dream which the giant immediately takes away from her, claiming it to be a nightmare. On their way out, Sophie decides to call him BFG. Soon, they arrive in London, where the giant stops at homes to distribute dreams. While doing that, BFG tells Sophie that he is as old as the earth itself, and that he can hear children's hearts, including hers. Later, BFG and Sophie both leave London, and on their way out, they spot the other giants leaving London. Apparently, they've been abducting and eating humans. Suddenly, Sophie remembers that she has lost her blanket, which starts to worry BFG. Suddenly, Sophie wakes up in front of the orphanage. She realizes that she is asleep and asks BFG why he is giving her a dream. Suddenly, he emerges and reminds her that due to her lost blanket, the other giants know about her. He also tells her about a boy who owns the jacket she is wearing. He says the boy saw him and he took him to Giant Country. But other giants found the boy and ate him. Sophie tells him she isn't scared, but he doesn't listen. Sophie returns to her room and gets an idea. She decides to jump off the balcony, but BFG saves her. They return to Giant Country as Flesh Lump Eater watches and enters his house. He uses a large umbrella to dodge the water and Sophie hides. Flesh Lump Eater enters with the other giants and shows BFG Sophie's blanket. He makes the other giants sniff the blanket, and they search for her. BFG tries to stop them and says that giants used to be peaceful. Sophie makes her way into a room in a tree that belonged to the boy that stayed with BFG before. Flesh Lump Eater searches the room and BFG gets angry. He picks up a metal rod and uses it to hit the giants. Flesh Lump Eater takes the rod, but BFG takes a bucket of water and chases him out of the lab. Sophie sees a picture of the Queen and gets an idea. She leaves the room and talks to BFG and says that she has a plan. She suggests they go to the Queen and ask for her help. They work with undamaged dreams and conjure a dream they will give to the Queen. BFG pulls out a nightmare and mixes it with different dreams. He mixes a piece of himself and Sophie into the dream. He places it in a jar for the Queen and continues mixing while Sophie narrates how to carry out their plan. They go to the Buckingham Palace and walk around as BFG listens to everyone's breathing to know where the Queen is. They arrive at her room and BFG uses his special trumpet to put the nightmare in the Queen's room. She dreams about the giants and wakes up in shock. Mary, the Queen's maid, enters the room and the Queen tells her she had a nightmare. Mr. Tibbs, the Queen's butler, enters with her breakfast. The Queen says she dreamt that man-eating giants were taking children from their rooms and eating them. She mentions some of the giants' names and a strange voice of Sophie. Mary reads the newspaper and realizes that children are going missing. The Queen fails to believe that, and she instructs Mary to draw the curtains. Mary screams and they see Sophie. The Queen says she dreamt that Sophie was on the windowsill, and Sophie says that BFG, who she calls her best friend, is hiding in the garden. Mr. Tibbs alerts the guards and the Queen realizes that Sophie needs her help. Sophie makes the Queen promise not to hurt BFG and calls for him, but he refuses to show himself and the others begin doubting her. Sophie screams, telling BFG to be brave, and emerges from the trees and guards surround him and Sophie asks her not to hurt him. The Queen calls Mr. Tibbs and he instructs the guards to stand down. BFG walks to the Queen's window and says he is her humble servant and come to assist her. The Queen contacts several people as Mary cleans and dresses Sophie. She enters the dining hall while a butler directs BFG into the building. They sit and prepare to eat and BFG sits on a chair that's placed on a piano. The butlers enter and use a ladder to reach the top of the giant table. They give him a shovel and a pitchfork as his cutleries. He tastes the food and exclaims that he won't eat snozcumbers again. Mr. Tibbs informs the Queen that the generals have been briefed and they enter the room. She tells them they have only one chance of entering Giant Country. They present a map to BFG and ask him where the Giant Country is. He informs them that it isn't on the map. The Queen stands up and says they are going to Giant Country. BFG runs out of London and several helicopters follow him. He enters the cluster of clouds and helicopter radars begin to malfunction. They make it through the clouds and decide to wait while BFG and Sophie enter his house. Sophie asks BFG if he has a plan and he retrieves the nightmare she caught. He says he will use it on the other giants. If it works, they will wake up trapped in remorse for all they've done. They sit outside as the giants sleep. She asks if he will still be able to hear her and he reminds her of his giant ears. Sophie holds his pinky with her hand and tells him it's time. BFG realizes he left his trumpet in the palace and Sophie takes the nightmare. She runs to the sleeping giants and Flesh Lump Eater wakes up as she tries to open the jar. She breaks the jar and the nightmares enter the giants, making them panic. Flesh Lump Eater prevents the nightmare from entering him and tries to hit Sophie, but BFG stops him. Flesh Lump Eater grabs BFG and tries to hit him, but the army arrives. They capture the giants as Sophie runs around the field to prevent being hit. BFG grabs her and Flesh Lump Eater is carried away. Sophie narrates how the giants are taken to an isolated island and are dropped in the water before the island. They drop Snozcumber's seeds as the giants' only food. Sophie gets adopted by Mary, and she wakes her up. She says she had a dream where she saw BFG leaping away. She could see his beautiful garden and inside his house where he cooked better stew. She says she talks to him when lonely because he always listens. She tells him good morning and BFG hears it from his house and smiles. Thank you for watching. For more videos, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel.